Hello everyone, this is Ferlyn Torrecampo. For today, I'll be presenting my chosen literary piece from Japan entitled Kokoro by Natsume Soseki. First, let's talk about the author. Natsume Soseki is widely recognized as the greatest modern Japanese writer. He was born as Natsume Kinosuke on the 9th of February 1867 in the Edo region, former name of Tokyo, to an unexpected 40-year-old mother and 53-year-old father. His parents had already had five children, so he was said to be an unwanted child. His family was wealthy, with his father ruling over an Edo neighborhood that handled public affairs. However, due to the Meiji Restoration in 1868, a year after Natsume's birth, yung posisyon ng kanilang family sa society ay unti-unting bumaba o bumagsak. At yung kanyang presensya nung panahong iyon ay nakadagdag sa paghihirap na nararanasan nila. As a result, by the age of 2, he was adopted by a couple of the names Shiyohara, and this Shiyohara couple unfortunately divorced 7 years later. Grabe yung hardship and heartbreaks niya at an early age, ano? After that, Natsume, together with his adoptive mother, moved back to his hometown. But kahit na sa kanyang hometown na ulit siya, hindi niya nakita yung kanyang family because Natsume's biological father and his adoptive father had a long dispute. Not until mag-21 years old siya, dun lang ulit niya nakita yung kanyang birth family. Now, moving on with his education and career, Natsume developed an interest in Chinese literature when he was just in middle school. But pursuing that field or yung literature in general was frowned upon by his family. So when he enrolled in university, he took up architecture instead. In 1890, he entered the English Literature Department. He mastered English and then graduated in 1893. Afterwards, he started teaching English in high school, and in 1900, at the age of 33, the Japanese government sent him to the United Kingdom for 2 years as Japan's first English literary scholar. Natsume described this time, however, as miserable due to poverty, loneliness, and his poor mental health. Now, upon his return to Japan, he started working as a lecturer at Tokyo Imperial University and became a professor in English there. This was also the period in which he launched his writing career with the novel I Am a Cat. After 5 years of teaching, he decided to become a writer and eventually wrote 14 novels before passing at the age of 49 from a stomach ulcer. Now, let's talk about the book. Kokoro is a literary fiction novel, so that's the genre. It was published in 1914, and the title Kokoro, when translated in English, literally means the heart. But of course, a lot of readers and reviewers believe that there is a deeper meaning to that. Kokoro was said to be Natsume's last completed piece. The novel was adapted into films released in 1955 and 1973, adapted into a 2-hour TV presentation in 1995, adapted to manga twice, and satirized in a cartoon collection in 2015. The story is told in the first-person narrative of a young man who meets a man he calls sensei, an older man he calls sensei. And the novel was written in 3 parts. Sensei and Watashi, or Sensei and I. The second part is My Parents and I. And then the third part is Sensei's Testament. Now, for the character list, first we have the unnamed narrator. So he is a well-off young man from the countryside who attends university in Tokyo. He is youthful and earnest, and he is drawn to Sensei but feels alienated from his family. We also have Sensei, who is an enigmatic, mysterious man who lives a reclusive and idle life with his wife. Although he is wary of the world in general, he becomes a mentor of sorts for the narrator. He hints of his dark past but never reveals it. Next, we have the narrator's father and mother. They are a pleasant, kind, simple minded couple living in countryside. The narrator's father is suffering from a chronic kidney disease. We also have Sensei's wife, or Oho-san. She is a very beautiful woman, said to have a simple minded nature but with strong emotional intuition. Sensei calls her by her name Shizu, but in the context of his story, she is called Oho-san, which is the polite form of address for young lady or daughter. Next, we have Okusan. Okusan is Oho-san's mother. She is a soldier's widow. Okusan is the polite form of address for someone else's wife. So he is Sensei's mother-in-law. Lastly, we have Kei. Kei is the motherless son of a Buddhist priest. He is extremely idealistic, determined, and indifferent young man who has been Sensei's friend since the two were young. So they are best friends. Now, let me tell you the summary of the story. In the early 20th century Japan, the narrator, a university student, meets an enigmatic and aloof older man whom he calls sensei. For reasons that he himself is not completely aware of, the narrator is drawn to sensei, and so while staying in Tokyo for his university, he often visits sensei and his wife at their quiet home to talk with sensei. Although Sensei gives the narrator a great deal of advice on life, he is hesitant to reveal the details of his own dark past, from which he has acquired those lessons, and this frustrates the student, the narrator's curiosity and earnestness to learn. So that is the first part, Sensei and I, or Sensei and Watashi. It's just, it talks about how their relationship grew, and it also says here we can say that the narrator is drawn, or he is actually into sensei, but we cannot box that kind of relationship. It's more of maybe a mentor and mentee type of relationship, or like a father and son type of relationship. The next part of the novel is My Parents and I. When the narrator receives word that his father's illness has worsened, he leaves Tokyo for his provincial hometown, where he finds that even though his father actually seems rather well, there is a painful distance between him, an uneducated and urban young man, and his family. Soon afterward, he returns to Tokyo and finishes his university education, all the while talking with sensei. However, the next time the narrator is called back home due to his father's illness, it turns out to be much worse, to the point that his father goes through a terrible physical decay and seems moribund, so he is at death's door. As the family awaits the father's death, the narrator receives a long letter from Sensei, at the end of which he states that he is going to die. Immediately, the narrator leaves his father's deathbed and rushes to Tokyo. So, in this part, we can see how deep the narrator's relationship with Sensei. That even though his father is already at death's door, or he is not getting any better, so he is actually nasa bingit na ng kamatayan. But the narrator, nagawa niyang iwan yung kanyang tatay when he received the letter from Sensei. So, makikita natin yung pagkakaiba ng relationship na meron yung narrator between his father and Sensei. And the third part, which is Sensei's testament. So, the secretive man, Sensei, reveals the past events that made him lose all hope in himself and the rest of humanity. Orphaned at a young age, Sensei allows his beloved uncle to take care of his inheritance while he attends university in Tokyo. But then he discovers that his uncle has cheated him of much of it. This incident makes Sensei very distrustful of other people. So that's the reason why he is like that. He is very aloof. He is distrustful of other people because of this experience he had with his uncle. Who na ninakawan siya ng kanyang minanang kayamanan. But Good thing, when he moves into board with widow Okusan and falls in love with her beautiful daughter Ohosan, he becomes more outgoing and less melancholy. So it is love that kind of saved Sensei from his loneliness and misanthropy. Hoping that the environment of Okusan's and Ohosan's home would help one of his university friends, to whom he refers as Kei, Sensei arranges for him to stay with them. Kei, the son of a Buddhist priest, is a strict, almost ascetic idealist who wants to achieve some kind of spiritual glory above all worldly things. Because of this, he becomes tormented when he too falls with Ohosan. So, after Sensei sees Kei and Ohosan getting closer, and Kei confesses his love for Ohosan to Sensei, nagkaroon ng love triangle. Sensei becomes desperately jealous. He impulsively gets engaged to Ohosan and then attacks Kei using the idealistic things he has said before. If you would ask me how did Sensei do that? Kei is almost ascetic idealist. So asceticism or ascetic, these people, they have this strong belief in self-discipline, like yung mga monk. They try to avoid any forms of indulgence. Ito yung ginamit ni Sensei upang tumigil itong si Kei sa kanyang panliligaw kay Ohosan. Not long after, Kei commits suicide. And feeling responsible for it, Sensei considers suicide, even as he is married to Osan. But instead, he decided to deny himself life by living a completely idle life. So, yun yung nangyari. Imbes na magpakamatay siya, ang ginawa niya is namuhay na lang siya kung paano siya namumuhay ngayon. Very aloof, malayo sa ibang tao, idle, talagang yung tipong hindi, so yun yung naging punishment niya sa kanyang sarili. But after the death of Emperor Meiji and the ritual suicide of General Nogi, so I think we are familiar with harakiri. So to follow the emperor, his lord, to the grave, Sensei feels that he has found the right time to die. So si Emperor Meiji nung time na yon ay namatay at yung kanyang general na si General Nogi ay sumunod na. So he performed the harakiri. So yun yung ginawang sign ni Sensei para ituloy na yung kanyang matagal ng balak na pagpapakamatay. So having finished writing his testament, he kills himself. For the themes, number 1 is mentorship. Sensei gives the narrator sincere advice in life. This is the kind of relationship that he does not find from his other university teachers or his father. Sensei, although he has a lot of issues in life, he's an older man and his past experiences gave him lessons to which he shared with the narrator. Next, there is also cultural conflict and loneliness. The story sets during the Meiji era. The Meiji era is a period of modernization and westernization in Japan. Elements of traditional Japanese thinking existed side by side the new Western thought. Yung family ng narrator and even Sensei's wife follow the traditional Japanese way of living. The narrator and those who receive university education, they were forced to adapt with the changes or the Western style. Now for Sensei and his friend Kei, yung Western influence and the idea of individualism left them alienated from their own society. They are trapped in the middle of two periods, and so the more they felt lonely. Next, we have misanthropy. It's another theme from the novel, especially with Sensei. When we say misanthropy, it is hatred or strong distrust of humankind. As I have mentioned earlier, yung misanthropy ni Sensei came from his experience with his uncle, as well as the result of what he has done with his friend Kay. Nawalan siya ng tiwala even sa sarili niya dahil sa malaking kasalanang nagawa niya. He lived a life of idleness, and he deprived himself of a life living in joy and happiness. Themes like truth and betrayal, life and death, and giri, which is the Japanese way of personal isolation, are some of the themes we may encounter when reading the novel. The novel also has symbols and representations, and these symbols can be seen through the characters. So, first we have the narrator's parents. They represent the traditional Japanese era. So, this is the period before the Meiji Restoration. The next one is the narrator. The narrator and even those who were born post Meiji Restoration represent the future generation. Sensei represent the generation stuck in the transition period, the old or the traditional Japanese period, the transition period, and the Meiji Restoration. So for us to understand these periods, let me share a little background information about those periods. Natsume was born in 1867. At that time, Japan has been ruled by a feudal military government called the Tokugawa shogunate for over 250 years. Shogun is the title that is bestowed upon a military dictator, and Tokugawa was the name of the first shogun and the clan that ruled that entire era. The Tokugawa shogunate ruled Japan under a very strict class system, choosing to isolate itself from the rest of the world, banning most foreigners in order to promote both social and political stability. The Dutch is one of the few, if not only people, who Japan was willing to trade with at that time. So if we compare Tokugawa shogunate with our time now, Japan is like the North Korea of our time. We know that North Korea is a communist country. There are ways that people can visit the country, but we must follow strict rules. I heard the news about this man yung nagpuslit ng moving Squid Game papunta sa North Korea. And he was actually punished. He was killed because the North Korean government doesn't allow their citizen to watch any form of media or entertainment from outside their country. So they actually provide what their people should watch and or should believe. Now, the decline of the Tokugawa shogunate was marked by the arrival of Matthew C. Perry at the Yellow Bay in 1853. Perry was a commodore of the U.S. Navy who came to the shores of Japan with 4-ship squadron demanding Japan to open its borders and threatened to retaliate if they are unwilling to negotiate. Japan eventually conceded, and in 1868, a year after Natsume's birth, the Meiji Restoration took place. This movement restored the power to the practical imperial rule and consolidated the political system under the emperor. So that time, ibinalik yung kapangyarihan sa emperor. At that time, it was Emperor Meiji. That's why the era is called Meiji or Meiji era. This was also the time the capital Edo renamed to Tokyo. Now I'll be sharing lessons and my personal thoughts or realizations about the novel. But first, let me share this line from Sensei. I prefer to put up with my present state of loneliness rather than suffer more loneliness later. We who are born into this age of freedom and independence and the self must undergo this loneliness. It's the price we pay for these times of ours. Sensei. Japan is a society that was strongly rooted in community and group mentality. This was pre-Meiji period. Now, when the country shifted to more of a Western-style society, one that prizes individuality and freedom, the consequence of that is more people suffer from loneliness. So I think the good thing about the Tokugawa shogunate ruling over 250 years is that Japan developed their group mentality. So we know that there are clans or parang bayanihan kung sa atin. But what is wrong about the transition? Imagine that's 250 years and then they shifted to the Western style of living. which is more of individualism and freedom. So, dahil dun sa pagbabagong yun, marami yung nakaramdam ng loneliness. We all know that change can happen anytime. And so the transition period is very essential. It's make it or break it. Like how the pandemic caused our lives to turn 360 in all aspects, whether health, finance, education, the way we live, and even our priorities. Many of us suffer the same loneliness as Sensei, trapped between the pre and post pandemic situation. Trapped between the pre and post pandemic situation. Many chose to continue and adapt to these changes or the new normal. However, some may be drowned with just the idea of it. I just hope that no one would choose to end up like Sensei. It's just so sad. That is why we have to check our family and friends and those who are dear to us. Yes, we have protocols to follow, social distancing, no face to face interaction or grand meeting or celebrations. But we are blessed with the technologies. We can use the social media and many more. That is why let's not give up on each other and continue to lift the spirit of others. My thoughts about this, we know that Sensei is so guilty about what he has done with his friend K. So he felt responsible for his best friend's death. And so he thought of taking his own life. But I guess it's because he was in that transition period wherein he lived a secluded life, a life apart from other people. And then he experienced misanthropy. I think it's the loneliness, misanthropy, and the guilt that caused him to take that action. So I believe that during this time, we, we may have friends who are experiencing the same thing. That is why this is the message that I want to share with you, that whatever we are experiencing right now, even we have our own difficulties and hardships, let us not give up on each other and let's keep on checking our friends and family so no one would end up like Sensei. I just can't imagine how the narrator felt after he finished reading the testament and knowing that the man he adores, the man he looked up to, the man he loves and so dear to him would end up like that. It's like Sensei did not come to a point where he was able to forgive himself. I hope that we've learned something from this novel, and that would be all for my presentation. Thank you for listening.